Hello, everybody. This is Jay with Behind the Grinds, the Professional GM Chronicles. I want to welcome you to today's showing. Today we have with us Delphi from Start Playing Games. Delphi, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Delphi has joined us to allow us to be able to pick his brain in regards to his insights in professional game mastering. Some of the things that he thinks that might be useful for us as a wannabes and developing our crafts. And we're just really blessed to be able to have him here. So with over 700 plus games to his credit, is that correct, Delphi? Did I get that
Yeah,
right? All right, great. It's obvious that he's got some insights that many of us can use. So at the very least, it gives us a chance to be able to up our level as far as storytellers and game masters for whatever genre it is that we're doing. So, Delphi, if you wouldn't mind, before we do this, guys out there, if you like this type of thing, please, 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 forge an alliance, like this video, share it with your party, and subscribe. So now that I got that shameless plug out of the way, Delphi, if you wouldn't mind, take a little bit of time and tell us about yourself.
Yeah. I'm a professional game master, and with about 2.5 years of experience at this point. I was once a high school social studies teacher. Did that for about 7 years or so through the pandemic, and learned that there were some things that I liked about being online, being able to directly connect with people a bit better. And I enjoy telling the stories. So as I kind of faded away from professional education, I looked to see what I could find and start working on. And I landed on game mastering. It was something that I had been doing for quite a while. I've been role playing for nearly 20 years in various forms, and game mastering primarily because nobody else wanted to in the party for 5 or 6 years before I started doing this. I had a summer that I could put things together and create the first game. I ended up getting my first game going at the very beginning of the what would have been the next school year, and I've been just kind of going ever since. And I now have over 700 games under my belt, getting closer to that wonderful 1,000 mark that I have my eye on. Maybe get to it this year, probably a little bit early next year, but either way, it's been a wonderful ride, a lot of fun, and I just, I clearly enjoy it quite a bit.
Absolutely. And as a public school educator, from one educator to the other, you have my condolences, and I'm so glad that you are able to find this. So, oh, Lord, I did it for 13 years. I feel for you. I know exactly what it is. So, if you wouldn't mind, what drew you first into tabletop role-playing games, and how did you become a game master?
So I started out doing online text-based games, just kind of forums and stuff like that, about 23 years ago or so. And over time, I started to, gather some friends who were interested in kind of the fantasy genre. We started out with D&D, tried it out at version 3.5. Didn't get very far because of the heavy loads of math and just trying to kind of deal with all of the nitty gritty of that. Tried it again after 5e came out, discovered that it had become a lot simpler, and just kind of, built from there. I became the DM because nobody else wanted to. I don't know why they chose me, the first one that I ran, because I picked it up, was Tomb of Annihilation, which they just got devastated with that one. It was great. The team decided that the best way to attack the tomb was to just go barreling down the levels rather than experiencing them. So it was great. It was fantastic. They managed to survive by finding a way out of the tomb, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of just random stuff that comes up and adventures and things like that. And over time, we ended up in the pandemic. We were doing that a little bit more often because it was the way that we could entertain ourselves in that time. And then after that, as I said before, just kind of rolled into doing it professionally. I had all the books digitally, and I was had a decent collection physically, and I just kind of built from there.
Very cool. That's awesome. What has been your most memorable campaign, both non-professionally and professionally. And what about those campaigns make it stand out to you?
Ooh, this is a tough one because I am the type that likes to find the good things in pretty much everything that I do. So every campaign has its like great positive moments and wonderful experiences. But non-professionally, I would say that the one that I enjoyed was I gotta give my shout out to Strahd, and the vampire legend and the party that this was a friend's party that went through the adventure, and we found that one of our characters wanted Strahd more than others, let's say, and made some choices. And the after impact of that, without getting into too many spoilers and details, was a fascinating one to say the least. The chase, and about half of the party barely made it out of Strahd's grasp. Professionally, my favorite would probably this is a great one. The favorite would probably have to be one of the ones that I've created on my own. I've taken I've gotten some experience, and I've taken some time and energy to kind of really just dive in on some of these adventures and started to build my own locations. And there was one where we were in the world of Theros, which is a Magic the Gathering campaign theme that that Wizards took over and brought over into D&D. And the party had to free a Sparta-like city from the grasp of one of the gods who had kind of gotten a little tenderly. So they were able to make the assault. I was able to kind of come up with some really awesome war mechanics to make the whole thing feel like a much greater battlefield than one party can kind of see. A lot of things happening in the background and kind of giving them bonuses and things like that based on how their assets did and things like that. And watching as they took it all the way, battled the avatar of this god, and managed to do it successfully with just some awesome finales and such like that. It was just a really, really awesome thing to see.
Very cool. That's neat. Well, with 700 plus games under your belt, have you ever had one of your sessions go off the rail? And if so, how'd you handle it? Right?
Yeah. I mean, of course, there's always the games that go off the rails, that go a little bit sideways and things like that. And that's one of the greatest things about role-playing games is that you never really know what to expect. There's a saying out there that calls attention to no plan ever truly survives an encounter with the players. And just by expecting the unexpected, having a great understanding of what you can and can't do and things like that. Probably my worst one was when I actually admitted that I didn't have anything else planned aside from what the player did, but I learned from that. And I mean, today I might say something after the fact, after everything has happened, but for the most part, I just kind of roll with it and see what happens, and we'll just see. Because what's the worst that happens?
You still have a good time.
Exactly. And some of the best moments are actually when I end up on my toes.
Very cool. Okay, so in your 20 some odd years of game mastering, has anybody been like a role model for you? Have you received inspiration from somebody? Is there any names that you'd like to give a shout out to?
The best one is probably Mark Humes of High Rollers. Early on in my professional career, I started to look at different game masters and try and find somebody who I can kind of like roll with and follow and such like that. When you do this full time and all the time, it's really hard to keep up with everybody. There's so many out there that you'll end up burying yourself. So I found one that kind of suits my philosophy and things like that. And I've modeled a lot of the things that I've done off of some of the amazing campaigns that he and High Rollers have done in the past.
Very cool. All right, so the next set of questions, we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to talk about your philosophy on game mastery. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, how do you balance narrative storytelling with player agency?
So what I like to do is I like to give the players as much opening as they can. And to that end, I will sometimes take something that might be a joke, something that might be just silly that they throw out. And if it fits in with the narrative, let's do it. I had one campaign where as world building, I threw in a few squirrels here and there to just, kind of be about. No, it wasn't squirrels; it was raccoons. Sorry, got to do it right. There were a few raccoons just scattered about, going about their business, doing raccoon things, just to show that the world was there. Over time, though, there were enough of these raccoons that showed up that the players started to think that there was maybe some sort of raccoon conspiracy. Yeah. By the time I found a druid who was willing to start to talk to the raccoons, oh yeah, these raccoons have a whole network going on throughout the world, and they've been both helping and playfully hindering the characters at various moments along the way. And it becomes a great story because it takes what the players want, what the players like, and kind of develop, and puts it into the storytelling. I can't do that with everything. Every now and then I got to have one that that's maybe a red herring or something like that, and I got to keep it there just to kind of not tip my hand completely. But I love giving the players an opportunity to tell me what they want to see in a game, especially when it's a custom game where I have a lot of freedom of action. I'm not worried about, okay, I've got to hit this element of the module or this element of the module. Sure. And even with modules, I'm starting to kind of free myself up from some of that because it makes for a better story if you can separate from, okay, we've got to get from A to B to C to D and never get anywhere else.
Okay. Yeah, I can see why that would work. Okay. What's your approach to dealing with challenging or disruptive players? Because I'd imagine with 700 plus games, you got guys coming in, going out all the time, and sometimes the luck of the draw, you might run into a unenviable situation. How do you handle something like that?
So I've been very lucky. I don't know if it's my price point or just kind of the way I handle games. I was a public school teacher for 7 years. So, if I can, I kind of walk in with the idea, if I can handle those kids, I can kind of handle, 6 people at a table.
That's true. That is true.
So I definitely give myself the opportunity. I make sure that I speak with every player before they come in and they start for their first time. I do a session 0 with them, even if it's a game that's already been going for a while. And as a matter of fact, especially if it's a game that's been going for a while, I get a sense of them. I give them an idea of what to expect at the table so that it's not a surprise to them, because I've noticed the few times where I didn't do that, those were the ones that became the most challenging, because the player is now surprised by what they are encountering and therefore less likely to engage and kind of push forward, yes, and sort of thing. The few times where I have had challenges or disruptions at the table, I've generally tried to work with the player. If it is them that is primarily the problem, let's just talk and say, okay, what's going on? How can we adjust this? How can we shift some things and make it work for you as well as the others at the table? In the rare occasion where it's been, kind of somebody else is saying that this player is a problem, I come in and okay, how can we adjust and find that balance for both of you? And in the end, in situations where the player is not happy with the ideas and doesn't really follow through, there are a lot of other tables. And this is not to say that I push someone away, but with role-playing games especially, you want to make sure that the player and the table match. And sometimes that just doesn't happen. But we are lucky in this business to have so many other tables that likely can work for that player. Sometimes I've been able to adjust a player within my games. It's worked out that another game has worked out really well for them. Other times, they've decided to take that step away and try and seek out other tables. And I always wish them well, because there's nothing to be gained by staying mad or keeping a grudge or anything like that.
Very fair. Well said. Do you think a game master should prioritize the story, the rules, or player enjoyment, especially given that you've got people paying you to be at your table? Where do you think your priority would lie?
I think all three are incredibly important, and they play into each other. However, I also, at the end of the day, I do prioritize the rules just a touch more than anything else. And the reason why is because the times where I might have fudged the rules or adjusted the rules or something this way or that way, it starts to create that snowball effect. The player thinks that, okay, that rule doesn't apply. What about this rule? Or what about this rule? Or what about this rule? And all of a sudden, that tiny bit of sway that started out now becomes this massive give and becomes really hard to kind of recover from.
That consistency.
Exactly.
I gotta be honest with you, Delphi. It sounds like you're describing a classroom. I'm getting PTSD just thinking about
it. Yeah. You gotta keep the consistency, and the rules are that foundation for that consistency. The story and the player enjoyment kind of worked hand in hand. If the players are enjoying the story, then the story is going to kind of feed into itself. If the story is something that's really awesome, the players are going to enjoy it. So the two of those work hand in hand, and the rules give you the common language in which to understand this, so that you don't have somebody who just runs off the rails and becomes the superhero of the story, and it becomes unfun for anybody else. Because that tends to be the most likely consequence of the rules starting to bend a little bit.
Okay. So this question right now is the most controversial question you're going to run into in this interview. Okay. It is, what's your stance on fudging dice rolls as a game master?
I try not to. In most cases, there are a few cases where I have determined or discovered that maybe the dice don't need to be a part of that particular moment. There have been cases where I will set up a enemy, for instance, because I want this to be a big epic battle and such like that. I will say that in my mind, something like this enemy won't take actual damage for the first 4 players. I want every player to have an opportunity at them.
Okay.
So then, I'll give it a round, and then after that, they'll start taking normal damage or things like that. So it's usually things that are very, small. And I always lean it in to the idea of, I want an awesome story for my players, and I want the players to feel like they managed to do something really great. If you one hit the big bad, as awesome as that might feel for the moment, it, first of all, no longer feels like a big bad. And then the rest of the party feels like, okay, so what did we do? I try and balance it. And over my 700 plus games, I've been able to find better balances and things, not just with the recommended numbers that come from the DMG, but also from that experience, that understanding, that knowledge that, hey, this one might be a little bit light, but I want him to be tough and cruel or something like that. So I need to put some minions in front of them, and then the players will still surprise you. So you've got to find ways to make the story awesome. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. But at the same time, you've got to be consistent. You've got to manage it in such a way that comes across as the players don't feel like they're being railroaded. And that part is actually even harder than sometimes making them feel like they're too heroic. So if I have to choose, I will choose to make them feel heroic than railroaded.
Okay. That I'm sure the players appreciate that, and it really does kind of resonate what you're talking about as far as I like the idea of giving the round off as far as taking points so everybody has a chance to get into it, because if you get a one hit thing, it's like you said, it's cool, but
Mm-hmm.
same thing, it's not very satisfying. You're expecting a long drawn out, this is the big bad. They need to be the big bad. All right.
Yeah. Conversely, though, nobody that I do that to should be one hitting the players on the way through. Again, that becomes that railroading versus keeping it fun and heroic. If the big bad manages to one hit this player while they are invincible, that doesn't seem fun either.
All right. Listen, we're going to switch over now to crafting worlds and narratives. But before we do that, I want to just remind the audience out there, if you like this type of content, please forge an alliance. Like this video, share it with your party, and subscribe. Let us know out there. We are doing this for you guys. So, all right. So we're talking about crafting words and narratives. How do you approach building your campaigns? Do you go from the top down or bottom up? And what I mean by that is I'm talking about top down. Basically, you have a big map, and we're going to start here. Versus bottom up, okay, the entire party starts up in a tavern at this little place, village, and it kind of grows from there. What's your preference on that?
I like both.
Okay.
Like the biggest campaign that I've done completely custom so far, I did top down. I had the full continent map. I was able to kind of say, okay, here's the party. Where do I want to have them start? Some of them might be coming from this region. Some of them might be coming from this region. Where's kind of roughly in between, that creates an awesome story and an opportunity to explore and kind of do a bunch of things like that. But once I've done that, then I turn it around. I flip it around and I say, okay, now here's the regional map, and let's start out here, and how will we grow out? And I've done it a couple of different types ways in a couple of different campaigns. I have one campaign that is very much a bottom up, tiny region. Stuck with that tiny region for the first two tiers up through through level 10. And is only now starting to get to the point where they have told me they want to kind of start exploring some of the rest of the world. So, but that's still moving quite slowly and growing into it. And another campaign where they're on a 1,000-mile trek across the continent. So they're going to see a lot of different towns and villages and ways of life and things like that along the way. So I like doing both, really.
Okay, and I can see why that'd work. It makes sense. What's your process for creating memorable NPCs?
Oddly, the most memorable ones tend to be the ones that I create on the spot.
Okay.
I try and definitely do some of that pre-planning when I know that I have somebody who I want to kind of be there for them and things like that. Oddly, I find that those, at least in my games, end up coming across as somehow the most suspicious. Whether they actually should be or not, it's really kind of amusing. Whereas some that I have created on the spot and a different system, a Powered by the Apocalypse system, which I run a number of games in, gives a lot of opportunities for those kinds of NPCs. I just find my players just loving and cracking up at these characters and what they bring to the table and things like that. So oddly, the most memorable ones tend to be the ones I create very last minute, like, okay, I need somebody right now. Who am I going to get? Okay, I end up having this crazy badger who just doesn't like to trade and is worried about the goblins that live in his tavern. And nice. And all of a sudden, yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so when you have as many games in your belt, and we're talking about players that come in and out, I can see a scenario where a guy comes in and says, here's my character, and here's his backstory, and you got to look at it and go, that's cool, but how do you incorporate that player's backstory into your game? And the other question is, how do you incorporate that person in knowing that they may or may not be with you for a little bit of time? How do you handle something like that?
So I tend to... first of all, set my expectations. If you're coming into a game that is already in progress, narrative is going to take a few sessions to really settle in, and such like that. You absolutely can bring anything that you want into the game that determines how you behave, how you act, and things like that. But elements of your backstory, they sometimes may fall to the back burner. I try to work with the players and pull and tug on threads where I have the opportunity. At the end of the day, however, I'm sitting there and I'm working with 6 players, and I need to make sure that it works for all 6, which means that if I have to make a choice of a character story or a large-scale story, I tend to make the choice towards the large-scale story, with the caveat that, some of these player stories, there might be some really cool, interesting places in them. But that comes back to setting that expectation. The better I set the expectation at the beginning, I let the players know, hey, it may take some time for your backstory to settle in. And when it does, you got to be ready for it. Because I do like to, I have some ideas, but it might take me 3 towns to get to it, because I have the first 2 already set, and that third one, there's a place in my mind that works for that idea, for that concept, So setting those expectations and kind of getting the players on board with that works really well. And I'm going to use that a lot here, is that setting expectations. Make sure that the players know what to expect. If you tell a player, hey, yeah, no problem, I'll get your story in without an issue, and you never come around to it, they're going to be upset. But if you tell them, hey, it's going to take some time, by all means, give me the stuff that you have, work in the things that the ideas that you have. And sometimes, I'll throw in, hey, we have, 20 minutes left in the session. I have a dream for this character. Or, I have a, quick vision for this character, walking through town. Oh, really quickly, do a perception check for me. Oh, do you see that person over there? Just tug the thread a little bit and let them kind of run with it as well. Do you chase after that person? Are you booking it the other way as fast as you possibly can? That's your backstory too, running away from the problems. So I have no problem kind of blending and working with the players, but setting the expectations is key.
Fair. Okay, so what kind of advice do you have for GMs that struggle with improvisation? I mean, earlier you cracked out at Badger, which is really cool. But how do you? What kind of recommendations do you give for a person to be able to develop that kind of skill set?
Really, it's kind of just keep doing it. Keep trying, keep seeing what works. Sometimes you're going to stumble and it's not going to work. Move on. The key is that really your players aren't going to know until you tell them. So this is like, classic theater, nobody knows if you fudge a line unless you act out and you say that you flip the line. So nobody really knows. And because you're guiding the story, you're the primary storyteller, allow yourself the space to make mistakes. Your players will tell you if something doesn't work for them. And there are times where I have also said, hey, this is a really important scene. I want to make sure I get it right. Oh, wait, nope, that's a Delphiism. I made a mistake. This is what they would actually say, because they would not say it this way. So give yourself that space, give yourself that time to be confident, allow yourself to be confident, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. You'll show the players that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to make some adjustments at the same time. Once a set of dice is rolled, that's locked in. Things like that. Don't allow for that kind of fudging to take place. Oh, wait, I saw that was a natural one. I don't want to do that action. No, that you lose something of the game there. But practice with yourself, practice with your friends. Talk in the shower, talk to yourself, come up with, a few of your NPCs and let them have a conversation. If it helps to, open up a kind of a word processor and have 3 or 4 of your NPCs sit down at the tavern and talk to each other and just improvise. Don't edit, don't do anything, just talk it out. Those are some of the ways that I've used over the years, but it does take time. So don't get down on yourself. Give yourself the space to make mistakes. Allow yourself the possibility that things might not always go right. It's a game. Everybody is here to have fun. Your players will understand if you say, hang on, that's not how they would say it. They would say it this way. I apologize. We're going to quickly revert back to that. And give yourself that space. It's really important.
Very cool. All right, we're going to pivot again. We're going to talk about a set of questions that are for Pro GM, that other people want to ask Pro GMs, like me, wannabes, to give an idea what it's like to actually be a Pro GM. So the first question I got for you is, what does the day of a Pro GM look like for you?
Well, it varies. Every day is a little bit different. I will spend a lot of time, thinking about, okay, what game do I have over the next 2 or 3 days? I try and kind of keep it fairly tight, because if I look at the whole week, I just curl up. But if I look at okay, tonight's game is such and such, and I want to make sure that I have this, this, and this prepped. 9 times out of 10, I will find that the prep that I do is often good enough for 4 to 5 sessions.
Okay.
So then that allows me to look at the next day or look at the next day. But it varies. It varies. You'll get a new player that jumps in. And so, okay, I have the game tonight at 5:30, and I have the player that joins at 3. I need to talk to the player. I need to adjust my schedule and kind of do some things differently. And that's you just kind of roll with it. Other times you do just really weird things. I have one game where it's a 6-player game, and they decided to build a Bastion, which is a new rule set from the 2024 Dungeon Master Guide. Okay. And they decided to build this Bastion together. And I offered to kind of build a map for it. They went on this long adventure, and when they come back, the idea is that they should have a map for it. So I'm building a map of this Bastion, and in this particular case, I'm using The Sims to build it. Okay. So sometimes I'm playing a video game. The day in the life can vary quite a bit. If you're doing additional jobs, maybe you're taking a computer with you and looking for time where you might be able to bang out a few paragraphs of story. If you're kind of quickly drawing a map or something like that you might need, or searching for a map if you don't have the time to draw it out yourself. Maybe you're looking for an alternate map that you can utilize and things like this. So it just varies. And that's one of the best parts about the job, is that every day is different, and every day is a new set of creative endeavors.
Okay. Along those lines, what kind of challenges do you face on a day-to-day type thing?
Some of my challenges are my own. I sometimes struggle with ADHD, so just trying to get myself focused on something. And then the flip side of that is, once I do get myself focused on something, making sure I eat. Making sure I take the time in between things to take care of myself, and so that I am ready to go for the game that evening. I do run 7 games a week across 6 days. Okay. So it's really, really tough to make sure that, I kind of keep a flow going. Another one of the challenges I face, and this one's actually kind of counterintuitive, is I love doing what I do so much that it can become very easy during times where I should be off to shut down and do something else. And so many aspects of things that I love go into what I do that it's sometimes hard to find those areas where I can turn off and do something else. So make sure that you take care of yourself. Make sure that you take care of the things that you need, time off, time away, things like that, because burnout is real, even in something you love. And in fact, if you burn out in something that you love, it may even be worse than burnout in something that you're just doing for a living.
Yes, sir. Amen to that. Okay, so what kind of player expectations? What do you see as far as what do they want? Why do they keep coming back? I guess is the best way to put it. What are your players' expectations?
So the players expect a good time. They expect to be able to kind of shut off from the world. And that's actually one of the most important things that I offer. And I didn't realize that I was doing it. You know, some of these things, you don't necessarily know that you're going to offer it until you actually have done it for a bit. And the players come back and say that this is really cool, or this is really important, or this is like what I try to do. Especially given the world the way it is today, so many players are looking for an escape, looking for a place where they can spend 3 hours away from troubles, away from challenges, away from things like that. And to be able to just give them a good time without some of those things that they encounter on a daily basis can be an incredibly cathartic experience. That's the word I was looking for. And beyond that, most of my players who continue to return say that they love the storytelling. They love the ease in which I, kind of manage and roll with things. Like I said, some of the best things I do is when I'm on my toes. And I really think that some of them, kind of come back for that reason. And just, to have a good time and experience things with each other. One of the things that I didn't necessarily go into this thinking that I would do is I've built a Discord community that is, I think, currently over 70 players strong. Not everybody is still active, but it's constantly, talking about various things. Over this last weekend, I think they were talking about Monster Hunter, just kind of a place where they can kind of gather and discuss things with each other, and in a safe environment, in a place where they don't have to worry about being able to be themselves. And that's really some of the intangibles are in fact some of the most important things in the experience.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you're running 7 games, 6 days a week and stuff like that. How many of those are campaigns versus one shots?
All of the 7 are campaigns. Okay. I use one shots when I have a game that needs to take a break. Maybe a couple of players go on vacation. When I have, things that come up, if one campaign ends and I have a few weeks before I can get another one rolling, I'll do some one shots. But my model has tended to stick with campaigns. I have a very, very good, strong foundation of players that keeps coming back and keeps liking what I do, which makes campaigns easier. But one shots are important because they also give that ability for somebody to just try it out and see, hey, is this something that I like doing? Is this something that somebody that I want to play with? So I try and have a few one shots every now and then as I can, but at the same time, I got to take care of me and make sure that I don't fall apart. That self-care is important. So I tend to try and use those one shots in strategic places where I have, kind of a week or two off here or there.
Okay. So with as long as you've been doing this, we take a look at when you first started out for your friends versus now that you're GMing for a profession. Have you seen a difference in perspective? How do you deal with things like burnout? Do you deal with things like burnout? Do you does it all just kind of work or mesh together? I mean, how does it work for you?
Doing it as a profession, I remind myself that I do this all the time. I'm not working on something else. This isn't something where I am sitting in an office somewhere, dealing with this and having that as a burnout, and this is kind of my relief. This is what I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy it immensely. I enjoy seeing the players week in, week out. I enjoy hearing them come to me with, oh my gosh, I loved that session, or I loved that, it was such a bad week at work, and this session really just helped me decompress and get through it, and makes it all worthwhile. As far as, kind of the comparisons between when I did this for friends, I'm able to lock in a bit more. I'm able to kind of keep things rolling a bit more. There is certainly an expectation when you have paying players that the sessions are going to go off. They can't, the cancellation rate has to remain low. It's going to happen sometimes. And you hope that you have enough time that you can give everybody some lead time that, you know, hey, I've got something going on, or hey, this week it sounds like we've got 4 out of 6 players on vacation. Let's go ahead and skip a week, or, you know, things like that. But when you're doing it for friends, you run immediately into the scheduling challenges. You know, nobody is paying for it, so it's not really something that they prioritize. And when you have players who are paying, there is a priority. There's an expectation. It's much like a college class, right? You know, you pay to go to college, you pay to, and you have an expectation that that class is going to take place as scheduled, when expected, for the certain amount of time. So there is a tightness to it as well. Being a teacher, I learned very well how to hour and a half. I have my first break, 3 hours, I'm done. And I very, very, very rarely go over, and things like that. So I, value the player's time. I show them that I value their time. And in return, most of them will give me that same benefit. And it keeps things rolling. When you're only able to go once every 3 weeks, maybe, you end up spending a lot of time in that session just reminding everybody what happened and things like that.
Okay.
Here, you're on beat, you're going, you're moving. Everybody has the expectation that we should be going. And it also keeps some of the above table conversation a little bit less frequent because the players all expect to be moving. I do run a chat room with my games so that players can use that to, hey, this is what's going on, but for the most part, we keep things rolling.
Very cool. So how do you create a sense of immersion then for your players? What is it about your games and the immersion that keeps them coming back?
That's a good question. I try to build the worlds for them, give them a sense of where they are. Maps are incredibly important, especially regional maps. Hey, you're here, you're here, you're here. But descriptions, painting a picture, but not just painting a picture, including those things like smells, sounds. What do you hear? What do the buildings look like? What does the town square look like? Is there like this large tree in the center that, kind of looks like it's maybe this really important landmark to the people of the city? And then starting to get in with the various NPCs with, who's important here in the town? Why are you here? What are you doing here? What is important? And I like to give players choice. You walk into a town, what would you like to do? Here are some of the things that kind of open up for you. I don't like to, kind of keep it tunneled. I did discover that when I did that, the players were less engaged, they had less input. So by opening it up and saying, okay, here's the town, and this town is very clearly known for its flower trade. You look at the main central market and almost everybody is selling various kinds of flowers. Over here, you have your tavern. Over here, you have your city hall. Over here, you have the central statue or the central tree. And what would you like to do? What would you like to explore first? And if you go, a certain direction, then maybe more description happens and you kind of build upon what they're looking at, but also on their expectations. Let the players do some of the world building for you too. If they have an expectation of a certain kind of character, let them have it if it makes sense. I want to look and see if there's a blacksmith here. Okay, yeah, there's a blacksmith. Let me really quickly roll one up and see what that blacksmith looks like or acts like, behaves. Things like that really help build the world too. It takes also some of the weight off of your own shoulders. It allows you to kind of put some of that onus on the players. The players do this, not just you. And they are going to be more engaged because now this is something that they wanted to do. This is something that their character felt was necessary. Don't tear up your plans, though. If it's a small town that doesn't have a blacksmith, let them know. There's no blacksmith here. I wonder why. That could be an interesting story plug. Let them guide you.
Okay. Let's pivot again, and now we're going to talk about the role of online professional GMs on the TTRPG community. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge right now facing game masters in the modern TTRPG community?
I think the biggest challenge is that there is so much. And that can be both a blessing and a curse,
okay,
right? Because there's a blessing in how many options there are, how many different games there are. There is one game that rules about 70% of the market, but there are so many other amazing games in that other 30. But sometimes it's really hard to get those rolling, to be able to show players and yourself that some of these other games are really, really, really awesome and can be something really amazing to run with and roll with and such. And I think the other biggest challenge is that there is still a huge community that exists. And this one, I don't want to knock it so much as just kind of admit that it exists, of players who are not ready to admit that this is something that they would like to pay for. There is a huge untapped market of players who still look at TTRPG as a hobby, and in many ways it still can be. You have a good friend, you have, a group that wants to come together and do this, and you can have some amazing adventures. But there are some realities to how much it costs to keep that hobby going. And so many players, so many GMs can burn out trying to kind of maintain this as a hobby. And the players don't really have to see those costs when they're in this kind of free verse. If you look behind me, you see a number of texts and books and things like that. And this is like across 4 shelves on my bookshelf that I have these. And there's a cost to this. There's a cost to running it, to our time, to our energy and things like that. And that's a reality. And that's not something that is bad. It is something that I think over time we will have to contend with. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge. And I think that the more and more we can kind of convince some of these free verse players that you can get a really good quality game if you're willing to effectively put in some of the GM's time and effort for that game, we're going to see a whole new group of players willing and able to start jumping in here.
Very cool. Okay, how do you feel about the responsibility of representing diversity and inclusion in your games, both at your table and in your actual game itself?
Yes. Thank you for asking this. I represent both the neurodivergent and the LGBT communities myself, and my games all represent that. I put a tag on every game that states that neurodivergent LGBT are welcome and it is a safe place for us. And I have had so many players come back and say that that is really an important factor. And it's not enough to simply say that you provide the space. You have to actually defend it. And in some cases, that might mean asking a player, hey, look, that's not okay. And calling out things, using an X card, using lines and veils, both at the table and in the community. It's important to make sure that you give everybody that space to be who they want to be, who they are, who they represent. So many players look for a space where they can be something other than who they are in the day-to-day grind. and it could be something that they are exploring for themselves. It could be their true sense of self. But it's just so important to be able to defend that, to be able to give them that place, that space where they can be who they want to be in the best way that they can and enjoy themselves without feeling like they're going to be judged. And it's incredibly important above table. At table, I immediately set lines for myself. I don't support any sort of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, anything along those lines at all in my games. The closest I come to is some of the if a player like wants to encounter and deal with the fact that they have a less than common species that they play, kind of having a little bit of kind of playing with that thread. But even then, I personally struggle with it. I would rather just have an open world that's accessible with a lot of conflicts that don't need to go into those things that are so real for so many people. And so I create all different kinds of characters. I'll create a community of halflings. I'll throw a tiefling inside of it with an ASMR kind of walking about, and without really needing to deal with any species conflict between them, because maybe the ASMR and the tiefling are competitors both, in the blacksmith trade. So that becomes lovely conflict. There's so much conflict that we can use and create in the fantasy space without making somebody uncomfortable. And I really like being able to do that in my community, at my table, and in my games.
Very cool. Very, very cool. All right, so this is the last question I got for this section. And after this, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more about, your projects or things that you might want to plug. What advice would you give to aspiring GMs looking to make a name for themselves online?
Most importantly is to be yourself. Allow yourself that room to explore, try different things, see what works, see what doesn't. Don't be afraid to shut something down that isn't working. If it's not getting where you need it to go, move on. Put it in your back pocket, maybe next game. Get yourself a community, and the next time you talk about, hey, I'm thinking about doing this kind of game, you'll be surprised. 3 people in your community, oh, that sounds amazing. Now you have the starting fixture for another game. Maybe they're people who are willing and able to kind of jump in right away. Maybe they won't be, but now you have some backing. You have some people who might be able to, hey, call a friend over and things like that. But at the end of the day, you've got to be true to yourself. If you're not true to yourself, if you're just going into this to try and make $1, you're not going to enjoy it. If you're doing this because you want to do this, because you've got a story to tell, because you've got a place that you can be and a way that you can help a community, you're going to rock it. You're going to rock it.
Very cool. That's all the questions I've got. Is there anything that you want to talk about or anything you want to promote or plug?
Yeah, of course. So if you're interested, I have my Start Playing Games account. I believe it's going to be LinkedIn.
That is correct.
So awesome. So just check out what the different games that I run. As I say, I run 7 games a week. I think 4 of those are Dungeons and Dragons, but I also currently am running a City of Mists, which is a powered by the apocalypse game set in a city where you're kind of got like piece of a myth sitting inside of you, kind of trying to get out, which is really cool as a kind of a mystery experience. I've got a game of Root, which is also powered by the apocalypse game, where you're kind of a bunch of cute woodland critters going around this woodland, playing a game that basically is Game of Thrones. And then it's so freaking awesome. The last big session for that one, the critters discovered that the group of baddies built their recruitment center terribly flimsily. And so they just plowed through and brought the entire center down. It was wonderful. And I also run a game of Marvel Multiverse, which is exactly like it sounds. Jump in, create your own superhero, and work to defend. Currently, they're defending New York, but the game is designed to continue to grow beyond that. So some awesome games that I have. I'm constantly doing random one-shots every now and then. I believe you have the opportunity on Start Playing now to favorite me, so you can kind of keep an eye out for new things when they come in. And then about once every 3 to 4 months, I also run a fundraising event for the Trevor Project, supporting LGBT youth out in the communities, and especially important these days. So I work really hard to kind of build that up over the last 3 years. I've had various games where we've raised over $3,500 for the Trevor Project, and our next game will be tied with Pride Month in June. So not sure exactly the details yet, but keep an eye out on my channels. I do have a Twitch channel that I broadcast those games on, so keep an eye out, look out for those, and we run various games on for that fundraiser. So
yeah, awesome! I definitely want to get that link out there attached to this video, just so people can see the Trevor Project and follow up with that. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Listen, that's all the questions I've got. We'll go ahead and start wrapping this up, but I just want to say thank you again for joining us, giving us some of your time. And, honestly, I found a lot of insight, a lot of really valuable information here, and I hope that the community will be able to take advantage as well. So, guys, again, if you have questions for Delphi, please put it on there. He'll want the communication. I want the communication. We want to see what you guys respond to. We want to see what you guys want to talk about. And, this entire thing that we're doing is just a way to be able to help all of us game masters to be able to get better at what we're doing. And for those of us like me who want to be a professional game master, what it is that we need to be upping on our game in preparation. So, these guys didn't have this type of resource. We do. So it's something I'm hoping to be able to take advantage of. So again, Delphi, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And
yep, of course. Thank you so much.
Like I said, I look forward to getting this thing out. I think that this is definitely going to be a benefit. So folks, thank you so much for your time, and just God bless.